Means we are moving toward the end of the Senate recess and the House recess, and all of our legislators will be back in Washington, D.C. for the stretch run of the calendar year. One of those legislators is Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who has been able to spend some time in the home state as of late. Good morning, Senator. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. Great to be with you. Great to be in Mississippi.
I know it is always good to be home, and does it feel like a little bit of a cleansing almost when you're able to get to come home and spend a few weeks and visit with some of your constituents, some of your voters, and be back here before kind of returning to Washington and the grind of the session?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt it is, and I have been covering the state. I'm headed to South Haven tonight, be in Jackson today. I think I've been on the Gulf Coast twice this week. Canton, been to Georgetown for Mercy House tour, you name it. And of course, Amtrak Mardi Gras service initial run. So we've had a lot of time to spend out with constituents and listen and get feedback, and continuing to do it until we go back on September the 2nd.
I was going to ask you about the Amtrak Mardi Gras service. I think you were there earlier this week for the launch of that. That's something that people on the Gulf Coast are excited about, and it's been a long time in the making. That service went away, I guess, post-Katrina, and now to finally have it back, it's a pretty neat accomplishment and something that a lot of people are excited about.
Yes, it really was, going through there and stopping at the different stops, especially in Gulfport. I mean, they had the high school band, the cheerleaders there. There were so many people out there for the passenger rail. And, it's going to be so convenient that you can get on in Gulfport, Biloxi, Bay St. Louis, and go over to New Orleans or go to Mobile. And they're hoping, it was a lot of the chatter that I thought was really interesting, was it's got to align with the Saints games, that we can take the train over, go to the game, and come back. But I don't know about the schedule on that and the timing. But it is exciting that it's so affordable. I mean, it's very inexpensive to do that. Some of the routes are like $7 that you can take, unless you do the full route. But it is exciting, and I think that the tourism, the bringing folks into the Gulf Coast for the day, I think it's going to be a major enhancement. And, oh, my goodness, what a beautiful train. A brand-new, beautiful train. So lots of excitement down there on that.
While we're talking about Amtrak, but specifically coastal Mississippi, the Gulf Coast region, let's just touch on some of the things that are happening on the coast. My colleague Ricky Matthews has talked a lot about a business alliance between the three coastal counties to really be able to kind of leverage the power of the coast that in some ways is untapped. But in terms of investment, of business growth, of economic development, there's a lot that's happening there, and a lot of it is tied to the military with some incredible growth that's happening in shipbuilding and other areas.
You're exactly right, and, we refer to a lot of that as the blue economy. And there's so much research that's being done there. There's so much manufacturing being done and with ships, with fleets that, the new businesses that have relocated there. We have one from San Francisco that came, and they're doing underwater drones. So it's a lot going on down there. And, of course, such a military presence. When you drive down the Gulf Coast, you really understand how important the federal government is to that area down there. And we have tons of meetings all the time for the supervisors, as we call it, the lower 6 counties that come in with so many different needs. But it's enhanced and it's growing, and we've got a lot to capitalize on there for continued growth. So pretty excited about that. We've got some really good leaders, and they do work together. And, we had a pretty contentious mayor's race down there.
We did.
But we've always had great leadership.
Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith is my guest. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. I mentioned the legislature not in session right now, breaking for August, but Washington, D.C. has not been quiet in the absence of you and all of your colleagues. The last few days have been really interesting to watch, outside looking in. The meeting at the White House earlier this week with President Trump and President Zelensky and the leaders from Europe. that were there, and that was on the heels of the meeting with President Putin in Alaska just a few days ago. From your perspective, as you watched that meeting unfold and you heard some of the things that were talked about, what was your takeaway?
Well, the thing I think that struck me the most is we have a president that is really intentionally motivated for world peace. The fact of how many people have been killed during these wars, and for literally 3.5 years, nothing was done, and that's when all the activity got created. But when the president, agreed to meet Putin in Alaska and the invitation there, it's just seeing those world leaders come together saying we've got to come to some agreements, to some peace agreements, and bring in the European folks into the White House, to Washington, D.C., in support of Ukraine. And, even Zelensky, as he left, he said this is a major step forward. And it's the president's leadership that has caused that, and I'm so impressed by that. I mean, they had 36 hours to get these leaders into the White House, into D.C., and, everybody was so willing to come together for the discussions. And I think, as Zelensky said, it's a major step forward that we have got to make some strides there. And, of course, the president's been criticized for being with Vladimir Putin, for having the meeting, giving him the time. But, when we're trying to accomplish things and we're trying to get the big picture that is in a better position for the entire world, which obviously includes so many facets of the United States, it's really important to do that. So I don't listen to the criticism. I think he's doing the right thing, and I'm glad that it's happening. He told us before we went into recess, he said, I want you to go home and I want you to talk about the big, beautiful bill and, specifically how it delivers to our state, how it delivers for Mississippi. And it has been, we've got a website that's the easiest thing that Mississippi can go to, Hyde-Smith.senate.gov, and clicking on that, and it's banner there, and it talks about the tax relief for families. It talks about how it affects Mississippi and what the stops the $1,570 tax hike for Mississippi households. The child tax credits are so important for those tax credits, and the higher standard deductions. The overtime is so big for Mississippi when there's no tax on overtime. I think of all of our companies out there that we have so many workers that try so hard, to make more for their family. And that's a pretty significant issue there. It's just so many things in it. The support for small businesses, the family farms. I say that we got a skinny farm bill in there because, we had to have 51 votes to pass that. And
Right.
It included a lot of the core farm bill elements, updating things that would have been so hard to have updated when we had to have a 60-vote threshold. And, the stronger safety nets, the reference prices were updated. I was really excited about that part of the big, beautiful bill that not a lot of people talk about. And, of course, we still have the farm bill to address. But I think it's going to be a whole lot easier to get the farm bill passed now since we've got so many things in the big, beautiful bill that is going to be so productive, but it's going to be helpful in getting the farm bill passed.
So you do believe that becomes more of a priority for legislators getting that farm bill passed? I mean, you and I think every time we've talked a little bit about the farm bill and whether or not it gets to the finish line. Is there a chance that before the end of this session, this particular year, that there is a working farm bill?
There's a possibility of that. Like I said, the contentious things have been taken out. So when we meet and, we can agree on so many things, we're going to be in a much better position to go ahead and get that passed.
Certainly would be impressive to see a bipartisan bill passed that is good for so much of the country. We're going to take a quick time out. We will continue with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith on the other side of this break, kind enough to spend a few minutes with us on this Wednesday morning. When we come back, we'll talk about recess appointments and the fact that those are not happening, why that was so important for the Senate and the leadership to have that in place, and also maybe a couple of other thoughts on the future of the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith in just a few minutes. Pleasure to be with you this morning. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi, and my guest is Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who is in Mississippi for a few more days until she heads back for the fall portion of the legislative session in Washington, D.C. Senator, I'm genuinely curious about the concept of recess appointments. I think we all know how difficult it has been to get some of President Trump's nominees across the finish line. There was so much focus on the hearings with the cabinet-level positions. And I think sometimes people forget how many more appointments have to be made by a president and how long it takes. And Democrats, we know, have been dragging that process out. I thought that there was an opportunity there for the president and the administration to get a bunch of the appointments done without some of the holdup in the Senate through recess appointments. Leadership, though, in both the Senate and the House said, no, we're not going to do recess appointments. We're going to gavel in with a skeleton crew so that we're technically in session as opposed to just gone, just away. Can you explain to me why that decision was made and what the significance of that is?
Oh, the recess appointments it was actually originated when Congress was out for months at a time. So, it was used at that time, and now we're in so much of the time it's really not necessary. But the president, if Congress does give him the power to do that, he can only nominate with the advice and consent of the Senate. But if we did give him the power to do that, the appointments would have to be confirmed by the Senate by the end of the next session anyway.
Okay.
That or the appointment expires. And, my understanding is they don't get paid until they're confirmed. And, it would have been nice to have gotten a lot of things across the finish line, but we would have still had to go through the process. And it was just the decision was made to stay at regular order. But, we've confirmed I guess as of July, the Senate has confirmed more than 135 civilian nominees. And then that was more than we got done in the first Trump administration by that time, in spite of, as you put it, the Democrats dragging their feet. So we've gotten a good bit done. We cast almost 500 votes so far this year, and that's more than any Congress, at this point in the last 35 years. So already more votes than in all but two of those in those entire years that we've gotten done. So the decision was just made to do that. And, a lot of the nominees, they don't want to sell their house and go ahead into the position, and they don't want to move if they're not confirmed by the Senate, which I understand that, true.
Right.
So we will have the pro forma sessions. I've got to fly up, I know, on a Tuesday to sit in on some of that, to sit in the chair for that to happen. Excuse me, I don't have a cough button.
Sorry about that. We need to send you one of those that you've got remotely.
Yeah. So, the decision was made to do that, but there's a lot of reasons why it is better to do it during the regular session.
And that makes sense, and that answers some of the questions. I guess I didn't realize that the appointment or the confirmation still had to happen after the fact. Is there anything that happens behind the scenes that maybe we don't see that feels like it is actually bipartisan? I mean, we know, especially in the Senate, that historically, even though there was disagreement, ultimately legislation got moved along, and there was, from time to time, bipartisan legislation that both sides seem to get on board with. It just feels like we're in a time where if it comes out of the mouth of Donald Trump or a high-level leadership position in the Senate, then Democrats are against it. It doesn't matter if it's good legislation, bad legislation, or somewhere in between. Is there anything bipartisan that happens that maybe we don't see on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, I'm the subcommittee chairman on transportation, housing, and urban development, and the bill that we came up with was definitely bipartisan, and it came out of committee with a 27-1 vote. So, we do get things done because, as I say, sometimes just because they hate Donald Trump doesn't mean they hate me. And, we are very different in our votes, and, I stand very firm on a conservative position. But when you have to have 60 votes to get something out off the Senate floor, you obviously have to compromise. And, I just try to respect everybody that's on that Senate floor. But when you talk about true hatred, they truly do hate Donald Trump. So when it's in an executive position, that they can lash out and they can stop something against him, of course they're going to do it. But we do have to run the country. We do have to get these bills passed. We're going back to work on the appropriations bills. We've passed 3 individual bills before the August recess, and that's the first time since like 2018 we've done that. So, the Appropriations Committee, we've advanced 8 of the 12 bills already, and all of that had strong bipartisan support. The goal is to debate and pass more bills in September and hopefully get the transportation, housing, and urban development, which is reported out of the committee, as I said, but we've got to get it, over to the House side. And so, yes, there's more on a legislative branch that we do compromise and we do get across. But, Buddy, when it's heads up one-on-one with the Democrat and Donald Trump, it doesn't matter what he says, it is wrong. But one of the things that I do want to highlight is the Trump judicial nominees for Mississippi. We've got 2 nominated that the president nominated Mississippi Supreme Court Justice, and that is Jimmy Maxwell, James Maxwell, and Bobby Chamberlain, whom I've served with in the Mississippi State Senate for the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Mississippi. Very well-qualified nominees, but, there's always a domino effect. When we get that done, now Governor Tate Reeves will appoint 2 state high court justices temporarily, then the special elections will be held. But I'm really excited about Jimmy Maxwell and Bobby Chamberlain. They both were on the Supreme Court. They both have really nice highlights behind them. They have great resumes. I've known them both for several years, so that is something that we did get done about a week or so ago, that we did get that out. And, I blocked a federal judge in North Mississippi on the Senate floor. I blocked. So that gave the president an opportunity to know that we've got 2 conservative judges that he was able to nominate. Of course, we've got to go through the process of confirmation for them, which, we look forward to doing that. But I just don't think that would be any problem. But it is pending Senate confirmation on both of those nominees.
I did a double take when I saw James Maxwell and Robert Chamberlain. I was like, that's Jimmy and Bobby, right? And so, yes, we are on the same page on that, and talked a lot about that last week when those appointments were made. It feels like big wins for Mississippi at the federal court level. I know you have a really good relationship with the president. I'm curious your thought on where we are today in terms of ruling by executive order versus being able to rule through legislation. And I know that 60 vote threshold that we were talking about just a little while ago is really, really difficult right now. What is your level of concern about executive orders kind of being the law of the land over the last few presidencies, honestly?
Well, I obviously have confidence in the president. I'm one that I like regular order. I like to go through the normal processes. And sometimes when you have a contentious atmosphere, that's just not possible. But there are some things that we have done that I guess I'm time limited here, that, we've worked through, not exactly through executive order, but just through the agencies and changing some protocols on things that needed to be done. So it's not always executive order that we can actually get a lot of things done. But I have confidence in him, and I do enjoy a very good relationship with him. It's kind of surreal at times that, I'm texting with the president on a Sunday night, or, he's calling saying, I need this, or, come over to the White House for dinner. But I enjoy that relationship with him. But, we have to keep him channeled too. And he listens. There's so many incredibly important things affecting Mississippi that it is certainly a benefit that I do have his ear. And I can go over and I can sit down in the Oval Office and say, let me explain to you the reason this position is this. And, I really think it puts us in a good position that when we have critical things that come forward, even if it's getting relief for tornado victims that it took so long to get, even down in Wausau County, the things that are pertinent to our state, it sure is nice to be able to pick up the phone and call it.
Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, always grateful for your time. Always enjoy the conversation. Safe travels to you, and look forward to talking soon.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. We'll visit again soon. That's Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith joining us this morning in the home state of Mississippi before she heads back to Washington, D.C. in just a few days. We'll continue.